The tea had gone cold again. Margaret noticed it the way she noticed most things these days. Quietly, without surprise, she was standing at the kitchen window. Both hands wrapped around the mug out of habit rather than warmth, looking out at the narrow strip of gray-green water, visible between the cottage rooftops at the end of the lane. On the small table beside her sat a stack of books she had been meaning to sort through for weeks. She had picked up the one on top that morning before the walk, an old novel, worn at the spine, one she had taught many times. And when she opened it, something had slipped out from between the pages and fallen onto the table. A small envelope, cream-colored, slightly soft at the edges with age, her name written on the front in handwriting she did not recognize. Not her address, just her name, Miss Lawson, in letters that leaned forward as if in a hurry to arrive. She had not opened it yet. She had set it down, pulled on her coat, and gone out to walk the way she did every morning. But she had thought about it the whole way to the shore and back. A small cream envelope with her old teaching name on the front. Waiting on the kitchen table like a quiet question she was not quite ready to answer. She set down the cold tea, sat at the table, and picked it up. The seal had been opened long ago and not resealed. She lifted the flap without effort and drew out a single sheet of folded paper. The handwriting inside was young, earnest, and slightly uneven, the letters still leaning forward. Dear Miss Lawson, I know this is strange to send a letter after so long. I left school 3 years ago, and I have thought many times about writing this and not written it. I am going to now because I think you should know. In year 11, you said something during a lesson that I have never forgotten. We were reading a poem, I cannot remember which one, and you stopped and said almost to yourself as much as to us that sometimes a person spends so long being who they think they are supposed to be that they forget to ask who they actually are. You said it like it had just occurred to you, like you were surprised by it yourself. I was having a very hard time that year, reasons I won't go into. I was not doing well, and I did not feel like myself, and I had no idea how to explain any of it. And when you said that, something shifted in me. I cannot explain it better than that. Something shifted. I am at university now and doing well. I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that you said the right thing at the right time, even though I don't think you knew you were saying it. Thank you. Yours sincerely, Ellie Marsh. Margaret read it twice. Then she folded it carefully along its original crease and held it in both hands and looked out at the window box where the rosemary was catching the early light. She did not remember Ellie Marsh. She tried. She sat with the name and turned it over and reached back through 32 years toward a year 11 class and a poetry lesson and a moment of saying something almost to herself, and she could not find it. Not the face, not the poem, not the moment. It was simply gone, absorbed into the long accumulation of ordinary days, and yet it had happened. Here was the evidence, soft and slightly yellowed in her hands. She put the kettle on and stood at the window while the water came to the boil, looking out at the lane without really seeing it. She thought about the version of herself who had said that thing. Standing at the front of a classroom, probably tired, probably halfway through a Thursday, saying something that had felt unremarkable enough to leave no trace in her memory at all. And she thought about a girl sitting in a row of desks, having a hard year she did not know how to explain, and hearing those words land. Margaret had not known. And because she had not known, she had never counted it. She made her tea and carried it to the sitting room and sat in her chair by the window. The sea was visible at the far end of the lane, gray and silver and calm as it usually was this early in autumn. She could hear it faintly through the glass, that low, steady sound like slow breathing, like something enormous choosing to be still. She had moved here 14 months ago, After the retirement party with its paper plates and kind speeches and a small potted lavender someone had wrapped in yellow ribbon. The cottage was small and slightly damp in the corners, and she loved it more than she had expected to. The walls were the color of old cream. There was the window box with its rosemary and late thyme. There was the single shelf of books she still trusted, lined up in the sitting room like quiet company. She had come here for the peace. She had not entirely found it yet, but she had been patient with herself about that, mostly. Retirement had made the stillness louder, and with it, the habit of looking back. Not bitterly. She had loved teaching in the complicated, exhausting way you love something that takes everything and occasionally gives it back doubled. She had loved the moment understanding crossed a student's face, that small interior opening, there and then gone. She had also, most of those 32 years, felt quietly certain that she was not doing it well enough. And then there was Daniel. She did not like to dwell on Daniel too long, even now. He lived in Edinburgh with his partner Fiona and their 2 daughters. They spoke on the phone every Sunday, and the calls were warm and ordinary, and never quite as long as she wished. He had turned out beautifully, her son. Generous and steady and capable of a laugh that could fill a room. She was proud of him in a way that sometimes felt too large to say aloud. She also knew, in the quieter part of herself, that she had spent so many of his childhood evenings arriving home hollowed out. Too tired for patience, too emptied by other people's children to have much left for her own. She had given him what she had. She was not always certain it had been enough. It was the same question, she supposed. The teaching and the mothering, the same long-running uncertainty. The same careful internal record of every time she had fallen short. She looked at the letter in her lap. She had kept no equivalent record of the other things. After a while, she rose and crossed to the small writing desk in the corner of the room. She propped Ellie's letter against the base of the lamp. Not tucked away, not slipped back between pages, set in the light where it could be seen. She stood looking at it for a moment. Then something else moved in her. A quiet impulse she didn't question, and she went through to the bedroom and opened the top drawer of the small wooden chest she had not properly sorted since moving in. Inside was the quiet accumulation of a life, old birthday cards, a watch that no longer worked, a photograph or 2 lying face down. She moved things aside gently until she found what she was looking for. A card in a pale blue envelope, Daniel's handwriting on the front. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. It was from 2 Christmases ago. He had pulled her aside after dinner that year, quietly and without preamble, and said that he wanted her to know she had been a good mother. She had deflected it the way she deflected most kindness directed at herself. A small dismissive sound, a change of subject. He had written it down too. Inside the card, in his careful hand, "You gave me more than you know, Mum. I hope you can believe that one day." She had read it once when it arrived and put it in the drawer. She sat with it in her lap in the quiet bedroom, listening to the sea come faintly through the wall. Then she carried it back to the sitting room and set it beside Ellie's letter on the desk. The pale blue card and the cream envelope leaning together in the lamplight, small and still and quietly insistent. 2 pieces of evidence she had never allowed herself to keep. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she put on her coat and went out to the shore. The afternoon had softened while she was inside. The sharp edge of the morning had gone from the air, and the light had shifted to something lower and more golden. The kind of autumn light that makes ordinary things look like they are worth remembering. The lane was quiet. Gerald the cat was gone from his wall. The hydrangeas stood at the garden gates, papery and faded and entirely unbothered by it. The air smelled of salt and wet stone and Somewhere behind it, the first suggestion of wood smoke. At the end of the lane, the sea opened up before her, and she stopped, as she always did. Tide was going out. She could see it in the wide gleam of wet sand, flat and silver in the low light, and in the slow recession of the waterline, unhurried, without drama, as if it had all the time there was. She walked down to the low stone wall above the shore and sat, pulling her coat closer around her. She thought about how many ordinary moments she had lived through without knowing their weight. How many afternoons in a classroom when she had said something in passing. The connective tissue of a lesson, nothing more, and a student had carried it somewhere she would never have access to. She would not know. She had not known about Ellie Marsh for years, and even now she could not find the moment in her memory. It had simply happened and been real, gone on without her, and Daniel, his voice on Sunday mornings, easy and warm. The way he said "Mum" so naturally, so without strain, as if there had never been anything difficult between them at all. She had spent years certain that the distance she sometimes has felt was her fault, residue of too many evenings arriving home with nothing left. But he had written it down. "You gave me more than you know." Perhaps he had meant it. Perhaps she's simply never been willing to let it be true. The oyster catchers were working the waterline, two of them, precise and purposeful, their orange beaks bright in the fading light. The sea moved in its long, slow rolls, that breathing sound, that ancient, indifferent patience. Margaret sat on the wall until the cold found her joints, and then she stood and walked home. The lane held the last warmth of the day in its stone walls as she came back through it. That generous, fading heat that autumn afternoons sometimes offer, as if in consolation. The rosemary in the window box was dark against the pale cottage wall when she came through the gate, and she touched it briefly as she passed. The way you touch something that has simply always been there and is always good. Inside, she hung up her coat and filled the kettle. She made toast and a boiled egg and sat at the kitchen table with a book open beside her plate. Lighter, reading something she had read before and trusted. The sea came through the slightly open window as sound more than anything, present and steady and asking nothing. Later, she moved to the sitting room. The lamp on the writing desk cast its warm light across the two envelopes. Ellie's cream, Daniel's pale blue, leaning together against the base of the lamp. She looked at them from her chair. She thought about Sunday. She thought about how, when Daniel said what he always said at the end of a call, "Love you, Mum, take care," she might simply say, this time, "I know, I love you too," without deflecting, without changing the subject. A small thing, perhaps that was where it began. With the small things you finally allowed to be true. The light outside the window had gone fully dark. Sea was still audible. That low, patient sound coming in off the water, easy and unhurried. She did not go through her list. The first time, in longer than she could clearly remember, she sat in the quiet room with the lamp burning and the two small envelopes in the light, and she did not go through her list. You may have spent a long time keeping careful count of the ways you fell short, as a teacher, a parent, person. But the record you kept was never the whole story. There were moments you gave without knowing you were giving them, words that landed somewhere you could not see, kindness carried forward in lives you no longer have access to. You were not as absent as you believed. Perhaps tonight you might set down the old verdict. Not because you have proven it wrong, but simply because you have held it long enough. You are allowed to rest. Somewhere along the coast, a small cottage sits with one window left slightly open to the night. A lamp burns low on a writing desk, casting its warm light over two small envelopes. One cream, one pale blue, leaning quietly together. A shelf of familiar books. A window box of dark rosemary pressed against the glass. Outside, the tide moves in the old way, slow and unhurried, drawing back across the sand, leaving the shore smooth and still. Its sound comes through the open window like breathing, soft, even, asking nothing. A blanket, a chair, the low lamp burning, and the night coming in, gently off the water, patient and wide and full of rest.